If you're a dad, you're not afraid to work hard.
Never give up.
Never compromise.
And the best dads always look for ways to get better.
I'm looking for something to energize me.
I'm looking for something to push me further.
And I'm looking for something to go with these nachos.
Dad Fuel, the energy drink designed just for dads.
So I can finish the fight.
So I can finish the race.
So I can finish mowing the lawn. And later on, I might watch some golf.
The fuel dads need to do the things dads do.
Climb the highest peak.
Go the furthest distance.
Check the scores. Read the newspaper. Give amazing relationship advice. Why are you crying? You should really talk to your mother about that.
Dad Fuel comes loaded with taurine, ginseng, and 100% of your daily recommended value of Hi Hungry, I'm Dad.
I start every morning with the 4 Ds. Devo's, donuts, Dad Fuel, down blanket. Breakfast of champions, baby.
Now available in 4 bold flavors. Original orange, Grow Model raspberry, Grow Master mango, and I thought I told you to take out the garbage grape.
You can't touch my passion.
You can't touch my drive.
And you definitely can't touch my thermostat. No way.
So whether you're thirsty for victory
Or just plain thirsty. No, seriously, it's empty. Can I get another one?
Dad Fuel.
Because I am fearless.
Because I am unstoppable.
Because the players on TV aren't gonna yell at themselves. Come on! Throw the ball!
Good morning, River Tree Church. I'm Pastor Angie, and we want to welcome you to service today. If you're new with us, we're glad you're joining us, and we would love to get to know you. If you would stop out at our Welcome Center to the right as you exit the worship center, there you can fill out some information, and one of our pastors will get a hold of you. For stopping by, we would love to give you some of our new River Tree items, like this great bag and a coffee card to our Well Coffee Shop upstairs for the next time you're with us. If you're joining us online, go to our website at wearerivertree.com and select the I'm New button. Even if you're not new, just stop by the Welcome Center where you can grab a sticker for your car, your water bottle, or even a bracelet that you can wear to remind you to live rooted. Next Sunday, we will have our Discover Tour. If you are new with us or would like to find out more about our church, we ask that you would join us in the Fireside Room, which is the room to the left as you exit the worship center. And we'll eat together, take a tour of the building, and you'll get to meet our pastors and find out all about our ministries here at River Tree Church. If you would like to give to River Tree and our ministries today, you can drop off your giving in the boxes in the back of the worship center. Give online at wearerivertree.com or text give at 605-655-2996. Because of the way you give, we are able to impact our community. Last week at our Serve Sunday, we had 250 people working to serve our community by building, launching, cleaning, feeding, and planting. As a church, we hope that we're all challenged to live rooted in a way that we can continue to impact our community. Check out this video.
Sometimes I wonder, is he faithful? Does he see me in my trouble? Does he understand? Sometimes I question if he's able. Can he rescue? Can he save me again and again? But when I look back, did he move every mountain? Did he part every sea? Yes, he did. So yes, he can. Oh, did he defeat the darkness? Did he deliver me? Yes, he did. So yes, he can. Oh, yes, he did. So yes, he can. 'Cause sometimes those voices try to tell me I'm forgotten and I'm falling too far from his hands. But I know what kind of God he is, and I'm trusting in his promises. I'm believing and I'm singing, yes, he can. Oh, did he move every mountain? Did he part every sea? Yes, he did. So yes, he can. Oh, did he defeat the darkness? Did he deliver me?
Would you join me in prayer? Lord, as we continue in our Virtue and Vice series, we know that we're going to need your help. First, help us to be humble enough to be honest in the areas that we know we need some improvements. Help us to open our hands and surrender these areas to you. Then help us to grow in these areas as we strive to be more like you. Psalm 8, verses 3 through 4 says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them." God, as we see the work of your hands everywhere and praise you as the King of Kings, help us to humble our hearts, and in our humility, give us a heart of wisdom. Lord, on this Father's Day, we want to thank you for the fathers in this room. I ask that as they seek to lead their families through their own integrity and spiritual growth, that you would give them a hunger for your word and the truth. Help them to stand up to the demands of this culture and the lies the enemy tells them that they are not enough, and give them the strength they need to protect and lead their families. In your name we pray. Amen.
To have Daniel Stanley here with us. Daniel Stanley is our gospel partner who serves in Haiti, and he hasn't been with us for a while, and so many of you are new to our church just within the past year or two. So I just want to give you a little bit of background. Haiti certainly has been, well, it's had a special. Going back to 2010 when the earthquake hit, I started getting involved at that point. You know, it was God leading us here back in 2016. One of the confirmations for me was learning about how Haiti had a special place on the heart of this church as well. Keith Nash, the pastor who served before me, was part of that team that was first on the ground putting the response plan together, and then this church sent the first rebuild team. And we've continued to be involved in Haiti ever since. Sadly, is still very, very great. They're still going, they're facing tremendous challenges, so they've needed support. And Daniel Stanley has been at the point of the spear of that support. So can we give Daniel a...
Thank you.
You could just introduce yourself to us.
Well, as he mentioned, my name is Daniel Stanley. As Pastor Brian shared earlier, I am not a doctor, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night. But I don't want to see anybody's issues after church. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Deanna, of almost 24 years. We have 3 children. Zoe's our oldest. She's married, has 1 child, and 1 more on the way. And that's why my wife's not here. My daughter went into pre-labor, and so the first grandchild was born during COVID, and she wasn't able to be a part of the birthing, and this one she's going to be, so she didn't want to miss that at all. But she did said to send her greetings to everyone here. And then my middle child, Isaac, he just got married in April to Ansley, and my daughter's husband's name is Alex, and their little one is Palmer. And they've changed the name 3 times on the baby that has not been born yet, so I don't know what it's going to be called. And then our youngest is Gavin. That picture there, he has a lot less hair than he has now, and he's in that phase with the big shaggy stuff. He's going to be a sophomore in high school, and that's the Stanley bunch there.
Awesome. So how did God end up leading you to getting involved in Haiti?
Well, kind of like you, my first trip to Haiti was in 2009. We have a big family presence in Haiti that dates back to the 50s when my grandfather was a missionary there, and then my dad and mom were both missionaries in Haiti as well. But somehow, out of the 5 kids, I was the only one that never made a trip to Haiti, and so when an opportunity was presented to go on a short-term trip in 2009, I jumped on it. And quickly realized why my grandparents were missionaries there. It's beautiful people, beautiful country, and like the pastor said, the need is great. And so God started tugging on my heart on that first trip. And then he kind of confirmed it on my trip after the earthquake. I went in 2010, 2 weeks after the earthquake. And I was taking a bus ride from Santo Domingo to Haiti because we couldn't fly in there. And the whole way across the Dominican Republic, God was saying, are you going to say yes or no? And so that was 2010. We answered the call in 2016, and were able to go to the field in 2018.
So can you just steal this from me here? Can you tell us about the work there? What is Gospel Partners or Global Partners doing in Haiti, and what's your role?
So Global Partners has a number of projects going on in Haiti. They have an agriculture project. The Chris and Corey Theed run that for Global Partners. And then we also have a hospital on Laganov, and Dr. Bob and his wife, Marcia Vermeer, are part of that ministry. And then I work directly with the National Church in facilitating groups to support new church builds, teams that come in. A lot of logistics fall onto me. I also do financial oversight for the mission work in Haiti as well. So we have a lot of irons in the fire there. But currently we have 0 missionaries in Haiti because of the political unrest and things going on there.
Can you describe a little bit what that situation is, and why is it so difficult there in Haiti?
Well, Haiti's always had political issues. They've ran off presidents. They've had coups. There was now an assassination of the last president. And the gangs have also gotten involved in Haiti. So that's ramped up the issues as well. They have not had an election to put in a new president. And so there's really no authority that is taking control of Haiti. And so the gangs feel very emboldened. They are expanding their territories from the little communities they were in to larger areas, and that's made it difficult to travel. Typically, when you would fly in with a team, I know several of you have been on teams, you would get off the plane, you'd get on the old cattle truck, and you'd go down the coast to Ortlip or to whatever remote build site you were going to. Road travel is impossible now. So when I go to Haiti, I fly in, get on another little plane, fly to Laganov, then I take a boat to Ortlip Ministry Center. And so logistically, that's a nightmare, especially if you were trying to bring in a team and do stuff like that. It's next to impossible to do travel. And it's just not safe. There's roadblocks, and of course, everyone probably heard about the 17 missionaries that were kidnapped back last fall. And so that heightened Global Partners' awareness of the dangers for North Americans in Haiti. And so, yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on. And there's no plan for an election either to bring a new president in. And the prime minister's kind of ruling by decree. And you know how well that goes in other countries. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. So please be praying for Haiti on that front. It will likely take some intervention from outside of Haiti to get things moving. But the situation there is pretty dire in the meantime. Now, since you've said yes, and the original plan was for you and Deanna to live there in Haiti, it's been incredible. There's been political rioting, so you get there, you have to leave right away. And then you get back there, and then it's COVID, and you have to leave right away. And then COVID finally passes down there, you're able to get back, political rioting, and an earthquake somewhere in between all of that. It's just been challenge after challenge. But in the midst of that, God does some of his most surprising and beautiful work too. What have been some of the powerful things you've seen God doing in the midst of all of that?
Well, I'll mention right off the bat his faithfulness. God has been faithful to keep a hand of protection around my family, the work in Haiti, our staff in Haiti. It's been amazing. With everything that's gone on, no one in close proximity to us has had any harm or danger done to them. So his faithfulness is number one. After the earthquake, when there was a much needed, a big need for water to be distributed to the affected area because there was no clean drinking water there, World Hope got involved. Ortlip was a staging point for the water that came across from Laganov. There's a desalinization plant over there, and they were producing lots of water, putting it in bags, bring it to Ortlip, and then they would ship it around the country, all the way around the country to the south. They actually have figured out a more direct path using boats, but Ortlip was a main staging point for that. So seeing God use our ministry to help the affected areas right after the earthquake happened, that was awesome. And then his faithfulness to keep our staff employed and paid. We've been able to do that without teams. Our business plan in Haiti is to bring teams in, and that brings capital in so we can pay our staff and our employees. Well, for 2.5 years, we've not had teams. We actually had 3 teams from Mitchell here canceled because of the political unrest. So we had materials all bought for a church build and everything, and weren't able to do the project because of the political unrest. But our staff and all the employees at Ortlip and on Loganov have all been able to maintain payroll because of the generosity of people like your church.
Any other things I guess you'd like to share with us before we wrap up our time here?
Well, I wanted to share a little bit about the history of what this church has done since 2010. You guys have built approximately 15 churches. And I say approximately because I just found out that we were sending supplies to another church that we've had stored at our place to help build a temporary facility. And 5 schools, a parsonage, and you've done several construction projects at Ortlip. So if you think about the ripple effect of what you guys have done building churches, that's approximately 3,500 people that are in church today because of you. So the roots that you guys are planting, that's the blossom that's on the other end of it. And the schools that you guys have built, the 5 schools, that's approximately 1,200 kids that are getting a faith-based education in Haiti, where they otherwise would not have anything at all. And those schools are all supported by either Compassion or World Hope. So those kids have meals every day, and they're going home fed and being able to live a productive life, whereas they wouldn't have that meal if they didn't have that school. So the ripple effect that you guys are doing here is just amazing, amazing work. And I wanted to thank you, first off, for your generosity, first and second, because you guys get missions. You get it, you're sending teams out, and hopefully at some point Haiti is going to calm down enough where you guys can come back to Haiti and visit us. But anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Daniel, awesome having you here with us. Church, can we express our gratitude for their courage and their work? Last week, we kicked off our series for the summer, Virtue and Vice. And really, the whole foundation for this series is the idea that good and evil both increase with compound interest in our lives, as C.S. Lewis put it. We know the power of compound interest. This is why most of us, even if it's just a little bit, put something away each month in our 401k or our Roth IRA, because we know that time and interest will cause that investment to grow exponentially. And that's true for money. It's also true for good and evil in our lives. And that's why it matters so much as to whether we pursue virtue or vice with our lives. There's never this idea in the Bible that, we get saved and then we coast through this life until Jesus comes back and takes us home. There's never this idea that how we live in the meantime doesn't matter. Jesus calls us to begin this awesome process of living out the new life he gives us now. Like once we're rooted in him, he expects us to grow, branch out, and bear fruit in him on this side of heaven. The Apostle Paul put it this way, Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 through 13. He says, "Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you." Again, this effort to work out our salvation, to pursue virtue,
It isn't a self-improvement project. We don't have the gumption in and of ourselves to get far down the road. And Paul doesn't even want us to try. It's not about pulling ourselves up by our spiritual bootstraps and getting the job done ourselves. It's about cooperating with God who is at work within us. And he works in us to do what? So that we would will and act in order to fulfill his good purpose. So that is the target. That is the goal, to will and to act in line with God's good purpose. That's virtue. And it goes beyond just an isolated act. To possess a virtue speaks of being at a place where our insides have been rearranged and lined up with Christ so that we actually want to do what's good. It becomes second nature to us. We almost have to try to sin. And can you imagine anything better than being at that spot when our hearts are operating that way? But it does take some work, and it requires surgery in all of us. And that's why for the next several weeks, we're going to be looking at the 7 deadly sins and the 7 most common troublesome spiritual vices or spiritual illnesses that we all tend to suffer from. And then we're going to look at the cure, which is the corresponding virtue God calls us to, that as we grow in it, it crowds that vice out of our life. So throughout this series, we're comparing vice to a weed and virtue to healthy grass. And if vice is a weed, then today the vice that we're going to look at is the one that is the root of all the others. Now, the Greeks, the ancient philosophers, they were wrestling with this whole idea of virtue and vice long before Jesus came to earth. And one day, when Diogenes, the Cynic, he was a famous philosopher in his day, showed up at Plato's house, most of you have heard of Plato, Diogenes was disgusted to find a new luxurious carpet on the floor. And to show his contempt, he wiped his feet on Plato's new carpet, saying, "And thus do I trample on the pride of Plato." With even greater pride, Plato muttered to himself. You see, of all the vices that we're going to talk about, pride has the dubious distinction of being the one that makes everyone sick except the person who has it. C.S. Lewis puts it this way: there is one vice of which no one in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when they see it in someone else, and of which hardly anyone imagines that they themselves are guilty of. There is no fault which makes someone more unlikable, and no fault which we are more unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. You know, the reason that we find pride so distasteful in others is because their pride is in competition with ours. Pride finds no pleasure in just doing something well. Pride only finds pleasure in doing something better than the next person. Pride finds no pleasure in just possessing something. Pride gets its kicks by having more than someone else, or having something that no one else has. And you know, when I was in grade school, I had some buddies where they all got into having aquariums. So, of course, I had to have an aquarium too. But for me, it wasn't about having an aquarium. It was about having the nicest aquarium. Did I enjoy having an aquarium? No, I didn't like it at all. You had to siphon out water every once in a while and replace it with fresh water. And I always managed to gulp or drink some of the yucky water I was siphoning out. And once on accident, I ate fish food. Have you read what's in fish food? It was disgusting. But it was all about having the nicest aquarium. It's pride that would cause a guy to steal another's girlfriend, not because he's attracted to that girl, but because he wants to prove he's better than the guy. Pride is all about having more than others, doing something better than others, making sure that we're above others. You know, at least with the other vices, there is the potential with them to bring people together. You know, vices like gluttony and sloth. Even anger and lust can bring people together, but not pride. Pride always separates, because with pride, the comparison game is always on. Pride always leads to hostility. In fact, pride is hostility towards others. Pride is the never-ending king of the hill game that goes on between people, and sometimes it even goes on between us and God. And because of this, pride serves as the root of vice. All other vices get their nourishment from pride. Pride pushes a guy to indulge his lust because after all, his needs are more important than anything. It's pride that causes a person to eat too much of the wrong food because, well, it makes me feel better. Pride fuels anger. And it's not just, how could they do that? It's, how could they do that to me? It's pride that nurses envy and greed. It's not right that they should have something I don't, because after all, am I not better than them? So do you see how that works? It is all about me. That's pride's anthem. Pride is at the root of it all. And folks, it's pride that made the devil the devil. Isaiah chapter 14, starting in verse 12. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. And the devil's name, Lucifer, actually means morning star. You said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. So it was pride that led the devil to think, you know what, I deserve better than what God has given me. I should be higher than this. In fact, I am going to be higher than this. And in his pride, he reached out to take God's place on the throne, which caused his downfall. All started with pride, and it's pride that led to our fall. You know, in the beginning of it all, way back in the first 2 chapters of Genesis, God made everything perfect. We lived in paradise. When we got hungry, we just had to pluck fruit from the tree. We also had this perfect, close, unspoiled relationship with God, this untainted knowledge of what was good. And the only thing God required of us is that there was one tree we were not to eat from. But Genesis 3. Now the serpent, the devil, was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will not certainly die, said the serpent to the woman. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So again, it was this desire to have more than what God had given to us. It was this desire to be like him, to have his place, and that's what led to our fall. And so ultimately, pride is the anti-God state of mind, and it is the cause then of every evil and misery that the world has experienced. And we've all been affected. So we all suffer from this disease. And the challenge is this: because it feeds all of the other vices, pride takes a number of different shapes and sizes, because it can actually hide behind other vices. It makes it all the harder to locate and deal with, and actually can hide behind virtue as well. And just like quite often when you go to visit the doctor, it takes a series of tests to locate the disease. It can take a number of different tests then to identify pride. So today we're going to run a couple of diagnostic tests looking at some of the most common forms that pride can take. And the first one is vanity. Vanity, it's the insatiable desire to look good, to be noticed, and be applauded. And vanity is certainly alive and well in our culture. One trip through the grocery store checkout lane will tell you that. And vanity goes beyond wanting to wear something nice. It's the desire to turn heads. Even worse, vanity relishes in making others look bad in comparison. You know, there are not only award shows in Hollywood like the Grammys and the Oscars. Now there are even award shows for who dressed the best at these award shows. But vanity, it isn't just about hairdos and clothes. Augustine, one of the great church fathers from the 5th century, he was a lawyer before he was a believer. And not that you can't be a lawyer and a believer at the same time. You can, but anyway, he wrote down in his confession of what he was guilty of that when he was defending a client, he cared more about his performance, how that would be viewed, versus the fate of his client, even if his client was facing the death penalty. That's vanity. Again, with vanity, it's about looking good. I don't care if I fail as long as I look good. The style points. So you might be guilty of vanity if you have stretched the truth just a bit in order to make people impressed with you. You might be guilty of vanity if you've gone home after a social gathering and then you start replaying, mental videotapes. Like, how did I look in this situation? And I wonder what they thought of me after I said that. You might be guilty of vanity if looking good is a more powerful motivating factor for working out than just being healthy. They market workouts now that are all about getting you ready for your next class reunion. Are you obsessed with making sure you fit into a certain size of clothing? What motivates you to work out? Eat less. Wear what you wear. Do you have a hard time going to the doctor? Fear can keep us from going to the doctor, but also vanity can as well. No, I'm fine. You don't want to appear less than. You don't want to appear weak or in need of something. You might be guilty of vanity if you have a hard time letting other people tell their stories. Instead, you're chomping at the bit, and even while they're talking, you're just reloading mentally so you can tell your next story. You might be guilty of vanity if you have a hard time celebrating other people's success and can't hardly keep from, jumping up and down if you see them crash and burn. Like, woo, now I look better. You might be guilty of vanity if you bought something simply because it wasn't about the quality, it wasn't because you need it, but you thought you bought something because you thought you could impress others with it. Ooh, they have one of those? That's one form of pride. Here's another: self-absorption, being consumed with one's own thoughts, agenda, or interests. It's kind of interesting that even from several non-Christian sources that I've listened to here lately, there's this concern of the epidemic of narcissism, the focus on oneself. Nervous father, he paced back and forth in the maternity ward while his wife suffered through a long labor giving birth to their first child. But when the nurses came out and informed him, "It's a girl," the father exclaimed, "Oh, thank the Lord. My girl will never have to go through what I went through this night." Really? By the way, that man was admitted to the emergency room just a few short moments later. We shake our heads, maybe we chuckle at the thought of it, but we can be just as hyper-focused on our circumstances, our plans, our dreams, and our pain, even at the expense of those around us. Just like that guy was. I give my mother-in-law a hard time about this, and she's really not a good example. She's a saint, but it still cracked me up when, because one of the family traditions is when it's someone's birthday, we go out to eat, and whose ever birthday it is, they get to pick where we would go and eat. Well, Michelle's dad, Brian, it was his birthday, and so Michelle's mom asked him, "Okay, Brian, where do you want to go to eat? Casa or Olive Garden?" Okay, this is in Sioux Falls. I'm like, really? There's like 500 other restaurants, but those are his choices? Come on now, Jude. Way to go. Way to make sure that we end up going someplace that you like. Now, again, really, my mother-in-law is a saint, but I think that's maybe something some of us can relate to. You might be guilty of self-absorption if you always have to pick the movie, and if it's not what you want to watch, then you aren't going to hang around and watch it with someone else. You're guilty of self-absorption if you tend to manipulate the family calendar around your agenda. Are you willing to have your getaway time or spend money on your hobby, even at the expense of your spouse or your kids? You might be guilty of self-absorption if you get really, really pouty if supper isn't ready the moment you walk in the door. Wait, how'd that one get in there? When was the last time that you gave money away to help someone in need? Really, self-absorption can be subtle. It can be hard to detect, especially because sometimes we will do something for someone else, but only enough to relieve us of we're protecting ourselves from having a guilty conscience and doing it. We're still focused on what we want. Or we do something nice to increase the odds of getting something from that person we want down the road. But all of it is looked at through the lens of, what do I want? Because after all, getting what we want is the most important thing. And so self-absorption is a common form of pride. So self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is being convinced of one's own rightness and or superiority, especially in contrast with the actions, abilities, beliefs of others. This is really the trickiest and most deadly form, because it is the form of a pride that blinds you. And what makes this one so deadly, I said, the vice of pride can hide behind other vices. Here it can actually hide behind virtue. It smuggles itself into our religious life. It is Phariseeism. It might even beat down some of the more obvious vices and cause us to think we can be moral apart from God, which is to tell God we don't need him. We can save ourselves. The devil is perfectly happy seeing us get victory over lust or gluttony or greed if it sets us up to be the captains of our own soul instead of our maker. It's like the devil saying, I'm more than happy for you to get over this fever here if it means you're going to get cancer. This form of pride is spiritual cancer. As C.S. Lewis says, it eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense. But you might be infected with self-righteousness if you are easily offended. How hard is it on you if someone snubs you? Or how hard is it on you if someone fails to agree with you or take your side or take your notice? Or how hard is it if you think someone might actually think you're wrong about something? How active then are you in trying to set that person straight? If those things have a tendency to really put a burr under your saddle or cause you to simmer and stew for long periods of time, you might be infected with self-righteousness. If you have a hard time accepting help, the prideful are willing to help others, especially when they get to reach down to do it. You know what I'm saying? You might be infected with self-righteousness if you can't remember the last time you said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You are infected with self-righteousness if you just can't forgive someone. So, how are you doing? Have any of those tests found something? Pride takes other forms too. In fact, if you made it through that list of diagnoses thinking, hey, I'm clear, that may be an indication you have stage 4 pride versus not having it. We all wrestle with pride. So what is the cure? Again, with this series, we are comparing vice to a weed. And just as the best way to fight weeds is to water your grass, promote a healthy lawn, the best way to fight a vice is to promote a virtue. So what is the virtue that we need to pursue where, as it grows, pride's driven out? Well, that virtue is wisdom. Wisdom is the cure for pride. In the book of Proverbs, we're introduced to 2 women who symbolize 2 ways of life. One's folly, the other is wisdom. The Bible tells us to run from folly and cling to wisdom, which isn't always easy. Most of us are typically torn between these 2 women. Folly's bad for you, but naturally appealing because she offers a good time. Wisdom is good for us, but naturally less appealing, at least until we really get to know her. Because in the long run, wisdom does offer the good life. And in Proverbs, we learn that folly is the source of pride. To live in folly is to deny reality. It's a revolt against the boundaries. It's a refusal to acknowledge that you're sick. It's doing all you can do to deny that you're actually getting older. It's to refuse to be wrong. It's the inability to lose gracefully. Folly leads to the kind of pride where we think it's okay if we bend the rules, because after all, we're above the rules. They don't really apply to us. It's no sin to appreciate the value that God has placed on us, but the prideful person insists on being on a peg higher. That's why wisdom is the virtue to pursue in hopes of defeating pride. Pride comes from an overinflated, reality-denying view of oneself. Wisdom pops that balloon and helps us land in our proper place. It keeps us from trying to control what only God can control and from judging what only God should judge. So how do we pursue wisdom? It starts actually with fearing God. Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's where it starts. This week, as you're getting ready and you find yourself in front of the mirror, tell yourself, God is God, I am not. All right, let's even say that together. Here we go. God is God, I am not. Do that every day this week. Burn it into your brain. Again, C.S. Lewis writes on how pride keeps us from God. In God, you come up against something which is in every respect immeasurably superior to yourself. As long as you are proud, you cannot know God. Proud man is always looking down on things and people, and of course, as long as you're looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. Starting each day with telling yourself, God is God, I am not, is a way to force our chin upwards and acknowledge him. It's a way to deepen our fear of him and reverence for him. Grows wisdom because it gives you the right perspective. Fear God. Then also let God's creation humble you. Psalm 8, verses 3 through 4. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of him? Human beings that you care for them. There's something powerful and something inspiring about nature, but there's also something humbling. I've been feeling that watching the floods that happen in Yellowstone. It's like that power is so much greater than anything I could come up with. There's something humbling about being in the Bighorns, where you get in country that is so vast and big that you actually lose perspective of the size things are, and you come up on this alpine lake and you think, oh, an hour or two, I'll hike around that. And yet 6 hours later, you haven't even reached the midway point around that lake. Theodore Roosevelt, he had a nighttime habit. He would go out on the White House lawn, look at the night sky. He would look at a familiar point and he would recite this. That is the spiral galaxy of Andromeda. It is as large as our Milky Way. It is one of 100 million galaxies. It is 150,000 light years away. It consists of 100 billion suns, each larger than our sun. Then he would pause, grin, and say, now I think I feel small enough. Time for bed. Let God's creation humble you, because you increase in wisdom when you do. Third one's a biggie that really gets down to the nitty-gritty is live in community. Another way to grow in wisdom is to open your life to the input of others. And like I said in the beginning, pride is always competitive. It's never cooperative. Pride always separates. It's always making comparisons and distinctions. Pride keeps you from being vulnerable. Pride keeps you from appreciating others. Pride is always putting up walls. So not only does pride separate, pride isolates. By living in community, you knock those walls down and you gain from other people's perspectives and really get to know other people. Ask them questions. Listen to their stories. Don't be in such a hurry to tell your own. I was listening to Jill Savage on a podcast a while back, and she was sharing about a relationship rule she'd put in place with her husband. When her husband came home from work, she just could not wait to tell her everything about her day. She would ask him, honey, how was your day? She would ask him that first because she knew he would just answer, good, and then she could corner him for a half hour and tell him about her day. So now the rule that she placed in is she has to ask her husband 3 questions before she can tell him about her day. So if she asks him, honey, how was your day? And he says, good. She asks a follow-up question that will draw more out of him, like, well, tell me, what was the highlight of your day? See how that works? Part of this is finding a friend who loves you, but is not overawed by you. Someone that you can even confess your struggles and your sin to. It is way too easy to just want to confess your sin to God, but the Bible actually talks more about confessing our sins to each other than to God. And I'll tell you, nothing deflates pride like that. Are you accountable to anyone in your life? Ask them, do I have blind spots? Our perspective can be so skewed sometimes. It's all about developing accepting but authentic and challenging friendships, relationships. And when we have those in our life, we grow in wisdom and pride shrinks. Fourth thing is just stop the spin. Take a hard look at your life and see to what extent are you your own press agent. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I saying this? And if you sense that really it's about making a good impression or promoting yourself or proving yourself right, then back away and silence yourself. Put what you were going to say back up on the rack. Make a conscious effort to find things to appreciate about someone else and encourage them. And decide to let your actions speak for themselves versus campaigning to guard your own reputation. Stop the spin. All right, as we wrap this up today, I can't help but think of Jesus and that moment where he was standing before Pilate. Now, in the past 24 hours, he had been arrested at night because the religious leaders didn't have the guts to do it by day. He endured a rigged trial, an illegal trial where they had mocked him, spit on him, beaten him. He had been condemned of blasphemy despite the fact that no charge against him could be proven, and he never got a chance to defend himself. And by the time Jesus is standing in front of Pilate, he has been flogged. I can't even begin to describe the horror of being flogged in the Roman world. And so the pain and suffering he was experiencing at this time was incredible. So now his entire back is opened up and bleeding. The crowd is calling for Jesus' crucifixion. Pilate questioned Jesus, but Jesus made no reply. "Why don't you talk to me?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" In other words, Jesus, don't you know who I am? Don't you realize how powerful and how high-ranking I am? Then Jesus said, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above." And that blows me away. Even after all Jesus went through, he just gives this matter-of-fact response. I mean, Jesus is the only one wise enough to understand what's all really happening in that moment, and he surrenders himself to death on the cross. This is Jesus. This is God's Son. He's allowing himself to suffer all this. I would have been tempted at that point to sound off on Pilate. Do I know who you are? Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea? Do you have any concept of the power I have? But we see none of that. There's no puffing out the chest. There's no calling for his rights. There's no spin. John Ortberg writes, God's great holy joke about pride is this: every human being who has ever lived suffers from a Messiah complex, except one, and he was the Messiah. God doesn't call us away from pride because he's threatened by us, but because pride cuts us off from him. Pride is the anti-God state of mind. It is the root of all vice. When we follow Jesus, we follow a God who is willing to die to self. Isn't that crazy? So get over yourself. Die to self. Pursue wisdom. Today, to just help us give perspective and find the grace to do this, we're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper together. You don't have to be a member of River Tree Church to participate, but you should be a follower of Jesus Christ. And if for whatever reason you just know you're not at the right spot to appreciate what this is about, or that you don't have the proper reference or motivation for this, then it's fine to just hold off and not participate. But before we share in the elements together, take time as we worship in song and reflect.
Was rich, I remember who I was. I was lost, I was blind, I was running out of time. Sin separated, the breach was far too wide. But from the far side of the chasm, you held me in your sight. So you made a way across the great divide, left behind heaven's throne to build it here inside. And there at the cross, you paid the debt inside my tomb of sin. You were buried for 3 days, but then you walked right out again. And now death has no sting, and life has no end. For I have been transformed by the blood of the Lamb. Thank you, Jesus, for the blood of life. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, it has washed me white. Thank you, Jesus, you have saved my life. Brought me from the darkness into glorious light. There is nothing stronger than the wonder-working power of the brought me from the darkness into glorious light. Glory to his name. Glory to his name. There to my heart was the blood applied. Glory to his name.
It was the night that Christ was betrayed, the night before he went to the cross for us. He gathered his 12 closest disciples, and he shared a sacred meal with them. And during that meal, he took the bread, he broke it, he gave thanks, and then he gave it to them, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body, broken for you. Let's eat in remembrance of him." In the same way, he took the cup, and he said, "This cup is the cup of the new covenant, made possible by the shedding of my blood. Drink in remembrance of me." Let's drink in remembrance of him. Would you please join me in praying the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope that this has helped you encounter God and worship him in a powerful way. And we hope that our gathering really helps launch you into this coming week with direction and momentum. Join us again next week as we continue in the Virtue and Vice series. Fathers, we pray that you have a wonderful, rich Father's Day celebration. Church starts now. Live rooted in Christ this week.
Did he move every